Hello! In this video I'm going to walk through 5 tips for better managing your Google Sheets data. These are 5 tricks that I use essentially every day in my daily spreadsheet work and can help you in better utilizing Google Sheets. So this will include hiding columns and rows, freezing data, filtering data, sorting data, and then finally deleting and inserting rows or columns. So check this out. So the first thing I'm going to highlight is the option to hide data. One of my favorite features in Google Sheets overall is the ability to hide data that I'm not needing, at least at the moment. It's often that a table has more data than I need for a specific task, and hiding certain columns or rows can simplify that task and is great, especially if you may need that data in the future. So this works for both columns and rows. In order to do this, simply highlight the columns or the rows, right-click, and select Hide. What this does is it collapses the data and hides it, and can be easily retrieved by simply clicking on the arrows. One thing to note is this data is hidden for anyone who utilizes the sheet, so be mindful that if you're hiding data, this does impact any users who also may need that data. The next feature I'm going to highlight is the option to freeze data. If you have ever had a particularly large table of data, you may know the challenge of scrolling too far down your spreadsheet and being unable to see your header rows. One solution for this is to freeze a row or column so that the data remains in view regardless of how far you have scrolled. This is especially beneficial for those large data sets when the data in your columns or rows is fairly similar and it's not obvious which goes to which header. So in order to freeze data in view, you simply highlight the column or the row, select View, highlight Freeze, and then select up to row 1 or up to column A. And this will adjust based on what you've selected. So in this case, I'm going to freeze both column A, and I'm going to freeze row 1 so that I can see the data regardless if I'm scrolling to the right or if I'm scrolling down. The headers and the transaction IDs will remain in view. So if you want to unfreeze the data, simply highlight the data, go back to freeze, and select no rows. Once again, highlight your column, view, freeze, and then no columns. The next feature I'm going to highlight is the filter option. So once again, if you've had large data sets, you may have needed to simplify the amount of data visible, but based on certain parameters. One example would be if you're looking to see units sold, but only for specific countries. So one solution for this would be to filter the data. So in order to do this, you need to select all of the data in the table. So in this case, you can just highlight all of your cells, go to the bottom, select data, and then hit create filter. So this now create a filterable table. Another option, if we undo that, would simply be to highlight the header rows and then do the same thing by selecting create filter. One thing to note is that if you do have any gaps in your data, so for example, if you had some rows that were blank like this, if you only select that top header row and click filter, it may not automatically capture all of the data for your filterable table. So once you've set up this filter, now you can simply click this filter button, and then you can deselect. So if I deselect Canada, for example, now Canada will not be included in my table. Or if I want to include everything again, I also could clear everything and then select only Canada, and now I'm only showing Canada data. So once again, keep in mind that this will filter data for everyone who is using this sheet, and also be mindful that this is filtering data for all of the rows across this whole sheet, not just the ones in your table. So the next feature we're going to talk about is the sort option. So instead of using the filter option that we talked about before, you may simply want to just reorganize or resort your whole table. This will reorganize all of your data and present the data in a specific order based on your parameters you selected. So in order to do this, you want to highlight all of the data that you are sorting. So you could do this by highlighting all of the columns. You could manually select all the cells, or if you know this is all of the data in the table and you want to just sort everything, you could just click this corner button, which then highlights the entire table. So once you've selected the data, you can hit Data, hover over Sort Range, and then select Advanced Sorting Options. If you have headers, which we do here, transaction ID, segment, and country, you can select this Data Has Header row, and then you can select based on which header and which column you'd like to sort the data. If not, if you didn't have headers, you would just select based on the column. So in this case, let's sort by country and have all of the data sorted alphabetically A to Z. So now it's all organized in a nicer list. Additionally, however, if you wanted to sort by multiple parameters, you could first do country, for example, and then you could add another column to sort by, and let's do product. So first it will sort by country, and then within each country it will also sort by the product. So you have it now alphabetically sorts both by country and then product, and is much more visibly pleasing for analyzing your data. So the last feature I'm going to talk about is the option to insert or delete columns or rows. So in many of the previous examples, we were coming up with solutions to make the data more manageable or easy to view. In some cases, you may simply want to just remove data that you don't need and may never need. So in order to do this, you simply highlight the columns or the rows, right-click, and then just select Delete. This option will exist for both columns or rows. Once you do that, it will automatically remove those rows and then move the data from right to left or from bottom to top and fill that space that was just removed. So the other option B, if you needed to make space for more data, you could also insert columns or rows. So if you select one column, you can select to insert one to the right or left. Of course, this will determine where it will be added in relation to the column or row you've selected. If you select multiple, of course, then it'll allow you to add multiple to the right or left. The same option works for both columns and rows, and the number of rows that you add will be based on the number of columns or rows that you've selected.